Morning, everyone. Today is Friday, May 21st, 2021. This is a special meeting to continue our Board of County Commissioners FY22 budget review. This is actually, I guess we might say this is the first of our deliberations, and these are the groups that we ask to reappear before us that report directly to the BOCC. Anyway, attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Our business and multiple action items, as I said earlier, fiscal 22 review of the county budget. And first up will be, well, Dena, you go first, and then Stephen, you'll lead us off. Go right ahead.
I just wanted to do a brief introduction. Your working agenda has a particular order. It's not your official agenda, so it's really not a change to the agenda. So I just wanted to give a disclaimer that these numbers were put together a few days ago. There have been personnel changes, as you know. We're reconciling those, and our first deliberations meeting on Monday will have all of those updated. So before you, I gave you a piece of paper. Those are the new and personnel changes for your particular department, so you have a snapshot of that. That's what's current. Everything else would be in the current budget. So without further ado, I'll let your departments talk to you, and we'll be here for questions.
You're gonna do airport first, right?
Yeah, we're doing airport first, yeah. Okay, Stephen. Stephen Kjergaard, our airport director.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioners, thank you for letting me go first. We've actually been looking at some of our revenue projections as well. We're actually increasing our revenue projections. In my opinion, we're still a little low on our estimate, but we felt that as we were going, we actually are increasing our revenue projections by about 105,000. So that increases our proposed revenue from about 1.1 million to 1.2 million for next year. I still think we're a little low, but those are on leases that we don't have signed yet. I don't feel comfortable yet. We do, as asked, we listed some of our capital requests of what we think are important, first through third. Realistically, if the board is amenable, I don't have a problem delaying all three of them, but at some point, they do have ramifications later on.
Okay, I'm sorry, which three?
The C budget.
Oh, on the C budget, okay, go ahead.
So that would be a $100,000 reduction. Some of the B budget increases, some of them are just costs we're going to incur. I don't know where we're going to cut those. So.
Can't you do anything but the water and the sewer?
I can't. We have to start, we need to start charging ourselves.
Okay.
Fortunately.
I understand.
So I don't have the exact calculation here, but I know that we still owe the airport about $131,000.
It was something along those numbers, yeah.
So I would ask that the cuts equal where your only general fund tax dollars are $131,000. Does that make sense? So right now,
Okay,
like
yeah.
I said, I don't have a way to tell here unless it's, well, actually.
We're close to that. The A budget is where I'm not sure about. I think we're gonna have to work with Dena a little bit more on the A budget. And we need to verify that that's what it's gonna be and where it's not gonna be, and that's where we can figure things out.
But you're not adding personnel.
We're not adding personnel, we're not changing personnel.
You did some switching.
We did some switching, but
Yeah.
when you really looked at it, it was mostly the same. We are changing this year at board direction of actually accounting for overtime instead of just allocating $2,000, but we do a lot more overtime at the airport than most other departments do.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, Leslie, go ahead.
Well, that would be, sorry, on here. I guess that would just be my request. So after it all pencils out about your asks and your revenue, how much is left? And then if it's over 131, then I would ask that, we could not do the snow push or cupping blade, or start deleting from the bottom up, I guess. And then next year, I would assume that you would be, 100% self-funded.
We're gonna do that.
Okay, so let's summarize that. So basically, the 131,000 that we owe you basically will take you into a balanced situation. Well, probably a little bit to the positive.
Most likely.
Is that correct? Well, yeah, just.
And that's
just a
fine
tad.
too. I
Yep.
mean, you're owed the money.
You're owed-
So,
yeah.
however that balances out, at this year, we don't have an opportunity to give you more than 131,000.
Yep, understandable.
Okay, so then are we foregoing the 3 capital requests at this point?
Right now, as it sits today, the proposed budget includes them. However, if we come back and personnel is higher than what we're anticipating, we would look to remove those items.
Okay, so let's go through this again. So we owe you 131,000. Are we leaving in the 3 capital requests?
That's what he's gonna figure
They're
out.
kind of
We
in
don't know.
limbo.
Okay, because you're waiting on,
We're waiting to, I need to make sure, because I saw another sheet while I was out, that said that we were at about 900,000 for a budget, which is significantly higher than what we're showing for this budget.
Okay.
But as we look through when we actually go through the sheet, it still says that we're about this number. So I need to reconcile those numbers before I can give you
Right.
a hard number.
So potentially, we would know by our 1 o'clock Monday afternoon when Dena gives us our new numbers. Okay, so if you'll work with Dena today, Monday morning, whatever you're able to manage, then that works.
okay, so you're waiting on personnel. Dena, are we assuming the matrix, the general pay plan matrix for fiscal 22? I wish Sylvia were here, but,
So because it's kind of up in the air, we have 2.5 million plugged
okay,
as an
okay,
increase right
Okay.
now until we work out those details.
okay.
So it sounds like our action items are to review the A budget, make sure that the tax is 131,000, and then we'll kind of see where we are as far as funding.
And actually, the raises don't really affect the situation because that money's already separate in the asks. Does that make sense? So, yeah, so if you guys can
in the
just
2.7.
get together, figure out how much general fund dollars you need, and then reduce that to 131, then I think we're golden. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Okay. Dena, just to help everybody out, because yesterday, I guess we finally got, if you want to call it the official word, in terms of HB 319.
389.
389.
Forgive me, 389, that was the property tax bill that was passed by the House, the Senate, and signed last week by the governor. Can you just, there's Sylvia, welcome. Can you brief everybody just on the highlights of that and what it means to us?
So the summary that I sent you is pretty much how things went. So at the very highest level, we can take 3%. We can take 90% of new growth. We can take, and those two together cannot exceed 8% of the prior year tax. We can also take 80% of any URDs that close, and we can take 1% of foregone. So basically 9% is where we stop.
Got it.
If we
Not
wanted,
including URDs.
not including
including the
URDs.
URDs.
And then if we wanted to take for capital, we could take 3% foregone, but once we take it, it would be gone.
That's correct, and it cannot be factored into future
Right, but
budgets.
that 1% for M&O could continue on in our tax base. So basically, we have a 9% cap.
Okay. So summarize, so put it into practical terms. This current, when we talk about the cap, we're talking about the cap on the taxable portion of our budget.
Yeah.
Not the $100 million total, well, 99 mil total budget. It's roughly on the 50 mil, it's actually 49.
It's 51,
It's
actually, now.
51,
Yeah, we're
okay.
up to 51
So
now,
when we
yeah.
say we can only take 8%, it's 8% of the 51 mil. End of story. 4 million, that's our cap. Unless we add the 1% foregone, but it's 1% of,
No, the 50 mil.
at 1% of the 50 mil.
Everything is based on that prior year
Okay.
Or the
base
prior
level.
three.
So even though we have a
Well, the
foregone
highest of
balance,
those, yeah.
right, even though we have a foregone balance of about $10.5 million, we can only take about 500,000 of that to get from the 8 to the 9%. Don't think of 9%, think of 8%. So basically what we're looking at is $4 million over last year. And currently, we're up over, are we 8.9 or 8.7 over? Something like that?
Yes,
saw
we're in the
8.7.
eights, but I haven't recalculated payroll, but I will.
Yeah, Jen?
For the URDs, that's 80%. You can go above that 8% on there, so it's
Right.
8% plus the 80% of the URDs.
Right.
That wasn't capped.
And that 80 and 90% is just not off the top. We're going to have that reduced levy rate to calculate those.
Right, so there's gonna be I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically a calculated levy rate based on a very complex calculation given to us. So we normally would just look back at our prior year's levy rate and apply that to new growth because it was the most accurate number we had at the time.
Now, the URDs are not figuring into the 8% cap.
No, but that projected rate is applied
To
to
the
that
levy.
value. It's applied to the new growth value.
Do we have anything else for Stephen?
Actually, one more thing.
Do you need to go?
The 200,000 for the harbs.
We have it in our sewer budget.
Okay,
I'm sorry,
All right,
Steve.
so that's
if you need to go,
Almost
go ahead.
enough to cover the
Yeah.
255.
yeah.
Thank you, I think we agree.
So the URD, the urban renewal districts that are expiring, those do not figure into the 8% cap.
Correct.
But we cannot take the full expiration amount. We can only take, is it
80%.
80%? So if we have $3.4 million expiring this year, take 80% of that, which is roughly 2.6, that's what we get.
Right.
That's what
But
we can
usually
take.
it's in value multiplied by this rate.
There you go.
So we don't know how much that will yield. And then we also, at the end, I think we should talk a little bit about ARPA funds because there was a big presentation yesterday with IAC, and there are some areas where we might be able to reduce the budget
Okay.
by paying for some of that.
They're paying for some of that. Okay, good. All right then, so Stephen is done for now. And the second one, let me take a look at my agenda here. Snow groomers. Nick Snyder, Director, Parks and Waterways.
Good morning, Commissioners. So I don't have any changes since the last time we met, significant ones, other than we did reach out to the auditor's office and request that a $1,700 increase be placed in our budget, split three ways between parks, noxious weeds, and snow groomer for sewer fees that may be coming this fall. So I wasn't aware of them when we put our budget together the first time, so we have added that. And then you might recall that we have approximately a $12,000 tree removal project and capital request in Fund 11 for the Celtice Cemetery, and our staff is working with Grace Tree right now to eliminate some of those. So even though I still recommend we keep the ask the same, I think ultimately it might pencil out less when we get there. It's difficult to say. So they're making changes. But anyway, with that said, I'm here for Q&A, so those are the only changes since we met last.
And we talked about potentially, if you were to have enough money in this year's budget to cover that, then that would also be helpful, but we won't know till fourth quarter.
Right, Commissioner, but next week we'll be dropping one of them. One of them's a problem right now. So
Okay.
it will reduce. That I can guarantee by the time we actually get there. I'm gonna ask Dena really quick. So we have a $12,000 ask, if you look toward the bottom of your page, for a tree removal project at Celtice Cemetery.
Right.
We're whittling that down now. So what would be the latest date I could come back and make that adjustment? I'd like to leave it at 12 today, but I do think we might be able to reduce that significantly by go time. So how much time do I have?
Mid-July.
Okay.
So the last budget meeting before we consolidate, when we absolutely need to be balanced, is mid-July. And then we present the
Month and a
first
half.
week of August with our tentative balanced budget. But I actually think we can balance the budget by the end of next week.
Yes, and to that point, you're going to be in fourth quarter, and so then you'll know how much you potentially could have.
We'll be much better off, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and we'll have a better idea, because they will be on site dropping some of those as early as next week. They recognize it's a safety issue at this point. So
Okay.
Okay, so, I'm sorry, go ahead, Dena.
We can cut that as late as the end of July if we get that information, because at this point in time, that would probably be funded by fund balance, so we would just reduce our fund balance use.
And so as soon as I receive an invoice for the work, I'll reach out to Dena and we'll reduce it at least by that amount.
Okay, so just for a quick recap, you're increasing your budget by 71,500, is that correct?
Correct, Commissioner.
Okay. And most of that, I'm looking at notes, and I guess it's been a couple of weeks since we met, Nick, are user fees?
Yes, Commissioner. Which account would you like to discuss?
Just give me a summary.
Sure.
I see Fund 11, okay, so your vessel is fees, your boat launch looks like it's fees, right?
It is, yes, sir.
Snow groomer is fees. What's our piece? What's the levy piece?
The levy piece would be, if I draw your attention to the top of
Right.
top of the sheet, you'll see
Right,
the.
negative 20.
Yes, we have a potential increase in noxious weeds for a salary adjustment. It also would be affected in parks as well. You'll see that there, and.
The $5,000.
Well, total all-in, fully loaded is about 8,500. It's split equally, 2,800 in each account. And then
Okay.
again in vessel, which is fee-based.
Okay.
As to capital, Commissioner, we have no capital requests in any of our levy funds. The only, capital request we have is in vessel, which is for restroom replacement at Fernand Park, and that is paid for by the boaters of Kootenai County. So there will be no money there. If I draw your attention to those funds 11, which is a replacement of our roof.
Yes. The 70?
Yes, the tree removal, and then, of course, a request for 2 snowmobiles for a one-time request for the snow groomer program to get some snowmobiles in our inventory.
Okay, cool. Okay, so basically, and I think I got it backwards, your total revenue budget increase is 71.5?
Yes, and we actually have some news on that, Commissioner. So as to boat launch user fees, the county commissioners has okayed or approved some increases there, and we are at about 80% of our revenue that we were at in total last year right now, and the sun's not even out. So we anticipate a significant increase in boat launch user fee revenues. Additionally, legislation was just passed in Boise, goes into effect July 1 for the increase of snowmobiles. After everybody's had their hand in the pot, it's going to put about $10 extra per snowmobile to Kootenai County. There was about 1,650 registered snowmobiles last year, so you can do the math. It's about 16 grand. So that's going to be a significant increase. We just need a year or two, really, with the program to truly understand the cost. This is the first snow groomer budget you've really seen. The Board of County Commissioners staff put together, bless them, all those years with really no information. This is a real depiction of what we think it's going to take to operate. So I also want to draw your attention to another thing, and that is back to snow groomer. We decreased a position there. It was a seasonal position in the amount of $20,770, and we've traded that for some overtime. So we've reduced it by $20,000. The position, we are asking for $5,000 in overtime. It's necessary to run the program. And then we took the $15,000 and we distributed it throughout the B budget because it just wasn't an accurate depiction as when we received it anyway.
Okay, so overall budget, fiscal 22 versus 21. Just give me a snapshot.
The difference is,
Just the change, the bottom line.
Sure. The bottom line is approximately $38,000 if you were to look at B budget and some salary.
Okay,
That is less capital.
Right.
it's less capital, right. And the 38 is on us?
The 38 is a mixture, so it's a mixture between, when you say us, the levy,
Yeah.
the levy portion,
Yep,
so specifically the levy portion would be 28 in noxious weeds. It would be 11,000, that's parks. It would be 5,500 in parks, and it would be, that's it. And of that, Commissioners, I want to explain why those extra costs come from. They're in B budget, and the reason for those primarily is the Board of County Commissioners asked that we implement parking fees. And there's a cost for that. So for signage, for envelopes, for annual passes, and for actual physical infrastructure to install it. So our increase, really, we would have came in flat almost if it wasn't for that. But that's a revenue generating expense. So while this first year will have an expense, we will see the benefits of the revenue the next year.
Okay. Any questions for Nick?
So I guess I don't mind keeping all of the capital asks in, knowing that the 12,000 is going to go down or go away, and then we'll just have to keep it in mind as deliberations continue on if we're going to be able to fund all or half or none of the roof this year.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's a big ask, and commissioners, I'm gonna stay plugged in with Dena and her team as well. As taxes start to roll in, it is possible that we could build some fund balance in noxious weeds and parks, which may be able to offset some of that $70,000 ask.
Yeah.
I can only go with the numbers that we have today, which doesn't lend itself to pay for it, but it is possible that we'd be able to offset that Fund 11 a little bit by that time.
Yep.
Okay. Are we okay then?
Yes, I am.
Bill? Okay. I don't know that we need a formal motion at this point, do we?
No, it's all direction.
Okay.
So,
Good enough.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. All right, moving on. Okay, so I guess we'll work our way back up. Veteran Services, Tom Freeman, our Director of VSO.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So just a quick summary of my budget. There's no capital requests, so C budget is zero, and B budget, we kept it the same as last year, so no increases, and so I assume we're here to talk about A budget then. And with the 4% increase, and the purpose for requesting a 4% increase is to bring the director's salary up to what I believe is market, for the minimum of the market, and also national salaries for a population, specifically the demographics of population of veterans that reside here in the county that are serviced, and to include, you know, their family members and everybody else, so.
What are some examples that you found in the area?
So the director of Veteran Services for Spokane County, that range is 55 to 74, 72,000, 71,000. I provided the sheet to you all last time, so I didn't. I do have extra copies. I can provide it again, but in Oregon, you know, for a standard VSO non-director, the starting salary is 55 to 65. In Ohio, where they have lots of counties, like similar to ours, you know, the starting range for a non-director VSO is 55 to 65. So,
This is not a big stretch then.
no.
so the issue I have is that we're going to start a wage study in October. And if we start looking at individual positions and picking markets from anything that goes away from our last study, then we're going to have a situation where people are being treated unfairly. So my goal is to definitely have, you know, at least a 2% raise, a 2% COLA. With that in mind, to me, that's a priority, and I think we're too, I guess it's too early right now to consider individual raises without deviating from the last market and knowing that we're about to pick our new markets and about to engage on another wage study.
Well, I have a problem with that because I think, I think the last one was deficient as far as doing a good job of finding people of similar skill levels and responsibility levels in the exact area that Tom works in. And he's the only one we're talking about, so.
I would add, now, we don't have a personnel request for a 4% raise included in our documentation. What we do have is we show about a $10,500 increase from mid-year changes. In the VSO budget, we don't have any new requests. So this 4% increase, we don't have that included. So we do have, again, that 2.5 million built in for everyone. But as far as the VSO budget goes, right now, we have a net increase of about $2,800 total, and that's driven by mid-year increases.
When you say mid-year, you mean mid-fiscal '22?
Mid-21, this year, since 10/1, there were increases to the director's salary as well as his assistant's salary, and that is driving a year-over-year increase right now.
Okay. Okay. Leslie, any other thoughts? No. When are we going to have a clear picture as to what's available for us for the A budget?
I will be bringing in Monday 8%. I'm just going to plug in 8% because that's our cap. And when we receive the numbers for the URD and for the new growth, then we can have a more accurate number. But as of yesterday, if 8% is the max, then that's what we could plug in. And I don't want to hazard to guess on what the URD value is going to be.
So I'd rather not max out. I'd rather not say we are going to take a 3% increase. We are going to take everything. So I don't know that I'm really comfortable with an 8%. Thanks. I just don't think we're there yet to know if we need to raise taxes 3%.
So what would the board like me to plug in?
I still want to go with 8%. Last year, we went with 0. The county continues to grow, the demands continue to grow, some of the services are lagging. How we get to the 8%, and I think maybe that's what Leslie's alluding to, is a different story. I don't know that we have that many options, but I think we're going to have to. I don't think we have a choice. Insofar as Tom's specific request, I think what I'd rather do is not act on that today. Let's wait till next week. Let's get a better picture of the overall personnel. Because I think what happens is we go through this, if we're going to try to make adjustments at the same time, let's have a better picture of precisely what we're looking at for the A budget. Then we can go back and say, okay, do we have to make any adjustments?
I think that's a good idea, and I agree with the 8%. I don't think we have much choice, given what's going on here in the county.
Well, with new growth, I mean, we'd probably hit 8% anyway. So
Yeah.
it's a fairly conservative number, but whatever you guys want me to plug in, I can have some options so we can change the percent on the fly on the summary to give you an idea of how much the percentage points swing. So we can build that in.
And I don't mind waiting on this particular one, but the problem is, the reality is, some of these people that we need, and we saw it at the sheriff's office, go someplace else
Well, and I don't know
with
if
their
you,
specialized skills to
Right.
take advantage of what the market will offer them.
I don't know if you read the paper this morning, but on the front page,
Not yet.
Dalton Gardens is having a mass exodus.
They
and
quit.
They may need to shut down the city operation because the wages are so low. So it's not just us, it's
No,
everyone.
No, but I mean, the city
Yes.
quit. They just.
Yes, it's scary.
Okay, so I would go with the, and I guess two of us are saying the 8%, but that doesn't necessarily assume a 3% tax increase. It's a question of how, we might have to, but it's a
We'll look
question
at,
of how we get to
we'll
the
look
8.
at this thing next week.
Yes.
Okay, is that?
You'll have a better idea
furniture
next
now.
week?
Sure, we'll have a
Okay.
better idea. So did you want me to add a personnel request to add 4% to specific positions, or no?
I would on this one, yes.
So Tom, if you can just send me
Yeah, go ahead and do it.
positions and what you'd like.
But where we wind up with that in the end is a whole nother matter.
That's
Now,
right.
the wage study that Leslie alluded to, and I guess I should ask Sylvia, that wage study would be implemented in fiscal '23, not this coming year.
Right.
Okay, and the current plan, and I think Dena might have answered this as well, is to go with the general pay plan matrix for fiscal '22?
So I have that as discussion for next Wednesday on the elected officials meeting.
Oh, that's fine.
I would prefer to not do a matrix because then we are going to, essentially it's saying we're committing to funding this when we don't even know what the numbers are. I rather say 2% raise for everybody, 2% COLA, instead of using the matrix. And they're about financially the same. But I'll have the numbers
Yeah, we can
next
take it up
Wednesday.
next. If they're essentially the same, and we can implement the matrix at the same time, why not?
Because now you're saying, in the future, we are committing to funding this matrix every year. It's just like the sheriff's department. The sheriff's department demands their matrix be funded every single year, and when you can't fund the matrix, then there's employee problems. So I rather say, everybody gets 2%, everybody gets 2% COLA, and then I don't know that this county will ever be able to afford a general pay plan matrix.
It's
but-
very expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive, but this county has been, I can't say forever, but for years has been behind, and I certainly don't want to be in the same situation as Dalton Gardens. Look, if we commit to the matrix and we have a year that's challenging, what's to say that we don't fund it that year?
Right, which is thus the problem. So if you have ranges, then you have some room to move depending upon funding availability, rather than saying, okay, we're gonna move a step every year and you blow out the budget every year with this matrix that you're tied to. And if you don't honor the matrix, then you have, a flight situation.
Yeah, but Sylvia, did you want to speak?
I just wanted to say, we just need to make a commitment to the employees that they progress through the pay plan. The nice thing about the matrix is that they pretty much know the way we decided a 14-year matrix. Typically, every year you would get a matrix step and potentially COLA. But as Chris mentioned, you could say, hey, this year we're in an economic downturn. There's no increase in a step. You try and give them something. But I just don't want us to get, whatever we decide, that we don't get into the position we're currently in that you guys are trying to address as catching up from years and years of staff not getting the proper increases. And we want to retain our staff. Right now we have 30 job openings with 60 vacancies. And we did a career fair and we didn't have a real great turnout, but we're competing against big box stores that are starting their employees higher than what we are. So as a group, we need to problem solve it. And I know revenues are an issue, but if we could make employees priority and give them a decent bump, cover their health insurance cost and all of that.
How many people showed up for the sheriff's department?
You mean at the job fair?
The job fair?
At the job fair, it was a county-wide job fair,
Yeah.
so I'm gonna say we had about 50 people there, and we were there 6
But
hours.
how many showed up for the sheriff's department?
I don't know.
I do.
Yeah, I didn't.
One.
Yeah,
That's not good enough.
yeah.
And
We
we're
had-
generally competitive with Coeur d'Alene now, aren't we?
Yeah, we're doing good. We're doing pretty good there. Of course, we're not competing against Spokane, but we haven't been able to. So
One.
we're pretty close with Coeur d'Alene. Yeah.
So anyway, let's see where we are when we get to the elected officials meeting, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Sylvia. Okay. So, Tom, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay. Let me go back to the agenda. That was Tom. We handled Parks and Waterways.
Yeah.
Okay. RMO, Jody. Oh, I got it right here. Should have been copying the freaking book. Okay. Okay, so this is Resource Management Office. We have our Director, Jody Beasy, and our Program Manager, Kim Riley, Senior Program Manager. Okay. Are there questions for Jody?
I would ask that we not fund another position when we have multiple positions that are outward-facing and dealing with the public. I want to make those priority rather than having an internal position be a priority. And I also want to and we're probably not going to be able to address this today, but I want to talk about bonuses and stuff like that at the elected officials meeting on
Okay.
Wednesday. Because my preference would be to give everybody raises and COLAs and not deal with bonuses. And I'll talk about on Wednesday the difference between a bonus and employee appreciation, because those are two different things, and I think they're used in two different ways. We're also going to have to talk about recruitment bonuses and retention bonuses on Wednesday. And once again, I think those are going to be priority.
Okay. The $6,000 bonus, I asked Jody to put that in. And the reason I did that is because people were approaching us throughout the course of the year and saying, you know, can I do a bonus? Can I do a bonus? And I said, well, you know what? Most of you hadn't budgeted for bonuses. So I said, for goodness sakes, if you want to give a bonus, put it in. And so that's why you see it here. But let's go back, and that's okay. We can defer that discussion to the elected officials. Was it Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, let's go back to the grants manager. Jody, you want to comment on that?
Yes,
Pull the mic in.
so since 2016, we have increased our grant funding by 21.3%. And I think that when we talk about a person out-facing versus in-facing, I understand that you're saying community-facing, those positions that serve the public, but in essence, the person that we're looking for would serve the public as well, because they would reduce the expenses that you're currently trying to reduce by bringing in additional funding for, let's say, the sheriff, or for the coroner who just sent us an email. Recently, we did a block grant, and we're about to do that. That M&A for that block grant is $50,000. So when you think about how the cost could be offset by M&A and the amount of money that's bringing in for reducing expenses, I think that I would prefer that if the board would so consider looking at it from a reduction of cost and an ability to be able to offset their payroll by M&A. And it would then benefit the county in multiple ways. So strategically speaking, for the sheriff's office, I'll just use it as an example, by us having a strategic approach to how we are going to use funding, it would enable us to identify funding sources. And those funding sources then would offset expenses. Right now, I think that we do look at it for purposes of saying I have a need. So for example, the coroner has a need, so he comes forward. But I think if we were more strategic and this individual was able to participate in a strategic level, then we would be offsetting expenses because there is funding available. Recently, Post Falls came forward and was sharing with you about all the grant funding that they're going to be receiving in order to be able to do their
URJ.
So when you think about that, that's funding out there. Right now, Idaho receives, let's say, about 23% federal funds, and so again, there's additional funding opportunities. So.
Go ahead, Leslie.
Doesn't change how I feel.
Okay. Who's funding this? Is this grant funded?
Oh, it would be the county would fund it.
we would fund
but
this,
that would be
okay.
offset in cost in terms of, as you go forward, there are M&A opportunities. So for example, on WUI currently, we administer the WUI, there's offsetting of cost on,
For everyone's benefit, what's WUI?
oh, I'm sorry, that would be the wildland fire projects that we do.
Okay.
And by the way, on that, we've probably brought in close to $8 to $10 million alone. And that obviously benefits the community. So even though that position isn't community-facing, it's benefiting the community in terms of those types of funds that would then obviously reduce wildfire. That's just one example. The other would be the idea behind water improvements such as Panhandle Village or others that are in the community that are looking for additional funding and the M&A.
Bill? Okay, so if I were to ask the question, can everything you just described, can that not be done with current staffing?
No.
Go ahead. You just can't, is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm just saying that we currently, when we look at the amount of funds that we've actually already managed, when you look at broadband, and that was $3.5 million, you look at the CARES funding, you're asking then us to sit outside of what a 40-hour work would be in order to be able to facilitate those. And although we want to be benefiting the community, and we see that as an asset, I think to ask us to take on more, and when you look at the increases of the amount of funding, when you ask us to take on more, We just need the additional resources in order to be able to do that.
How much additional grant funding do you think this individual could account for?
I wouldn't be able to speak to it really.
I mean, it doesn't
similar-
have to be scientific.
Well, I would just look at, for example, when we look at block grants, and if you go for 500,000, you get the 500,000. Let's say, for example, in the past, Alpine was one that we did. That's a 50,000 M&A that you get for managing that grant. All, or most, I wouldn't say all, most funds, you are able to get either indirect costs or M&A. And that incumbent,
Define M&A for,
oh, sure. Management and administration.
okay.
Go ahead.
Jody, can I jump in for just a sec?
Please, yes.
Okay, I don't want to steal your.
No, go
thunder.
ahead.
Okay, so did they get this?
Oh, no, I forgot to hand that out.
Okay, so Jody's going to hand out a graph that I threw together, and here's kind of where the rubber hits the road.
Go ahead.
So we know that we're going to get $32 million in ARPA funds. ARPA funds are federal funds. We have an expert in federal funds. It's very complex. Jody has that knowledge and experience. So if you look from 2016, and I just threw this together really quickly, when I started in 2016, we had a $13 million grant portfolio. Right now, we have a $31.7 million grant portfolio. And if we add in ARPA 1 and ARPA 2, that goes up to $64 million. So that's a lot of money to manage. I know that my team struggled, and we had to hire a temp just to administer the broadband grants, not let alone the hundreds of hours that were spent just to administer $2 million worth of coronavirus of the $4 million that we were awarded. So taking that into consideration and taking into consideration what we just talked about with taxes, we have an opportunity to get out there and start being more aggressive in our grants to help subsidize our tax that we're losing or that we potentially don't want to take. So we're positioned really well with this team to bring somebody in, train them up, and get them going on getting grants for the county to help offset tax. So just wanted to throw this snapshot out because it's pretty dramatic when we pull in the ARPA funds, the numbers that we're going to have to be managing
Same
as a
thing.
county.
Tell people what ARPA means.
So American Rescue Plan Act,
Okay.
U.S. Treasury, 32 million coming directly to the county that we're going to need to manage.
Except we don't know if we're going to accept any of that right now. So I think that's ahead of schedule, number one. Number two, the $655,000 grant that we got for the OEM is going to cost taxpayers close to $400,000 general tax fund. So these grants are not all peaches. They cost general tax fund dollars. So I think we need to be looking at this holistically and not just saying free money, free money. How much is it going to cost the taxpayers for this free money?
Sure, but you
So-
still have to manage it, and there's still rules around it. So all I'm saying is, when you're considering positions, this position has the potential of bringing in revenue to offset the cost of this position and help fund operations, critical operations, if we see that we have a tax shortfall or we don't want to take the full 3% of our taxes. So it's just something to consider.
And the ARPA money, we don't know if any of that's going to be able to go to personnel, right? So even though they're managing the 32 million, that doesn't go towards their salary.
Well, it could on the public transportation side. It could
Yeah,
because they're
that's true.
considered.
That's one of the items identified.
So that is one that could be funded. And I just, if I wouldn't, I'd like to ask a question. When you say that it comes from the general fund, would you be kind enough to give me a little bit more description of what you're talking about at OEM? I wasn't quite following.
So the land, $294,000, that was general fund dollars.
Yes.
And then the repairs, and it may need a new roof. There's a bunch of problems with the building. And so all of that stuff is going to have to come from general fund tax dollars.
Okay, so that was for the Office of an Emergency Management that would then be supporting the region. So if you felt that you wanted to be able to offset those costs, you may wish to look at the region and ask for additional funds from them to offset the cost if you so desired. But I think on that, that is actually something to fulfill an obligation, or at least what you would like to do is to have an Office of Emergency Management that could coordinate in the event of a catastrophic event, which we had. I think OEM did an outstanding job. That's just another example of having people who are quite adept at their job and doing it very, very well. And I feel that there are times where we do need additional resources, and that would have been an example of one where we did need additional resources to serve. I understand that serving the community costs money. I realize that it does. But there's a certain level of contribution that you want to make to the community that's going to be able to serve them well. So in an event of an OEM, as an example, a catastrophic event, you want those trained individuals coming together, and you'd want to have a Office of Emergency Management.
Sure, and I'm not arguing that point at all. What I'm saying is free money is not free. And we need to be aware of, every time we enter into a grant agreement, what does that mean for the taxpayer? So,
I would agree that it's not free. I would agree.
Okay. Fair enough, okay. I hate deferring because things accumulate. I have no problem with this. Even if I put the ARPA funds aside, you've got a threefold increase in the number of grants that you're managing, and I think it's only going to grow. As far as I'm concerned, we're taking that $32 million. How we use it is a whole nother matter, but I'm not going to go down the same road that we did with the 10 mil. Find out afterwards, even though I didn't necessarily agree with the philosophy behind it, we didn't take it. Perhaps we should have anyway. So I have no problem with this personnel request. Bill, your turn.
I'm in favor of the, taking the 32 million. I don't think a Democratic administration is going to come back and try to take that money back. We're small potatoes, and 32 million is not small potatoes to the county right now. As far as the personnel requests, I want to hold off. That's all.
So what do you want to take it up next week when we take up the others?
Good
Leslie?
news.
I said my piece.
Okay, so we defer to next week. It's between you and me, so you want to hold off till next week? Fair enough. Anything else? Thank you. Who's next?
Community support.
Community support. Okay, here we go.
What does that mean?
Those are all the other organizations.
I know.
Yeah, okay.
It's just, we should tell people, community support.
So I have one question, and I think it went around email, but I did not print it. Where is the rent coming from for the University of Idaho Extension? Is that another fund balance thing? Because that's where all the money went.
That's the 72,000, isn't it?
You can fund that with fund balance if you like. I will say that yesterday's meeting that talked about the ARPA funds, we can use ARPA funds for community support.
Okay.
Keep going. Okay, does anyone have any questions on any of these asks?
I do. I would ask that we reduce or eliminate support to Coeur d'Alene Economic Development, but that's what I ask every year.
I'm not even going to comment on that. I would keep it at 45. What we lack is we have skill shortages in this county. As a matter of fact, the state of Idaho ranks last in the nation for available skills to fill the jobs that are coming in. And these guys are trying to invest in developing those skills through different groups and organizations. So I'm not for the increase, but I'd like to maintain the 45,000. Bill?
And for the 45,000, and I want to see some results. I know this is a real abnormal year. I am tired of hearing about, we got a big one on the hook, just wait, but we can't tell you who it's going to be, and it never quite materializes.
Well, actually, that's not entirely true. There's a major trucking company that has already purchased the land. They have 700 jobs, 100 coming in initially, high-paying. They're a nationwide firm, and Kenworth, the manufacturer, is coming in with an accessories unit to provide support for that, and there are others.
I'm happy to hear that. I want to see the job.
Okay,
So, but I agree with you. We'll maintain it.
fair enough, okay. Anything else?
I think that's good, but I guess the rent piece, Leanna, do you remember that email that went around?
Yes, and that is not included in this,
Right.
That is a different portion.
Is
not
that
included.
accounted for somewhere?
It is in our budget, the 36,000 for this year, or for next year, yeah.
Okay, all
And it
right.
was discussed that because they moved out of elections, I believe the clerk had said they would help fund that. And Dena, I'm sure you
They
remember.
already did.
Yeah, yeah.
They, yeah, last year.
Yeah, so,
Yeah,
Back to fund balance.
correct. So that's what I'm
So-
saying. So maybe it's appropriate for the 36,000 to come out of fund balance.
for next year.
Yes, because that's where it came out of for this year.
Okay, so the increase is modest. It's
Yes,
like,
the largest increase was the Jobs Plus had asked for 5,000.
oh, okay, so.
Over
so
last
we
year,
kept
because
it
we
at
had dropped it
45.
down.
So basically, we're running flat.
Yes, $400 is the only increase, and that's the University of Idaho
Okay.
Extension Office.
Okay. I did get a call from Vicki Nelson, who's the executive director of Kootenai Humane. As you know, they're trying to build a new facility. They've got 75% of the funding. At the 90% level, they'll start construction and presumably borrow the rest. They've exhausted tapping their large donors. They're now resorting to small donors. And she approached me and said, can the county help us out?
I would say no.
I would say I'd love to, but no.
I want your opinion.
My,
Come on, Mariana.
well, I don't think that the county is in a position to be donating to the Humane Society.
Not when you're raising
Personally.
people's taxes, right?
Right. I think it's a personal decision. If someone wants to donate to the Humane Society, they can do that on their own.
I would urge everybody who lives here to donate. It's a great.
Which
humane
I fully
society.
support, and I think the Humane Society is a great organization. I think they do wonderful things. Just don't know if this is the proper avenue.
You know, it's interesting, everything else we do has to do with people. Except for animal control, but
So the
that's a little
definition
different.
of a community support is listed at the top of that legal-sized handout.
To local, go ahead.
Excuse me. The code is used for annual payments to local agents, local service agencies that provide help to needy
Okay.
residents within Kootenai County.
Fair enough,
I don't
case
believe-
closed. Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else on community? I guess not, huh?
Changes?
Yeah, go right ahead, Jen.
So at our IAC training, they did talk about this grant, and I know we give money to Panhandle Health, and I believe we also give money to Heritage Health. I think, as Dena and I were discussing yesterday, would qualify for that grant, so maybe offsetting what we give for general funds. So right now, Seth said at IAC that share that we give from the county to Panhandle Health is at 800 and
800 plus the additional,
140
so.
or
it'd be
yes,
1.6,
so we
yeah.
typically, I believe, levy for that. That likely could be covered under this, these new grant funds.
Okay,
And then also, as I mentioned, Heritage Health, also police holds, we still have to fund that. That comes out of General Fund 10. And currently, this coming fiscal year, we're gonna fund that at, for the police holds, hospital services, $185,000. And for professional services, $133,528. And then also, we're going to be picking up the state share to Panhandle Health come March 1st. And that's going to basically be, the whole year estimated is $846,000, so divide that by 2. So that likely could come from, instead of the the restricted fund 40, that also could become covered by the grant.
the grant.
So there is some opportunity there to offset levying, again, for Heritage
Right,
Health,
right.
police holds, Panhandle Health.
Seth also said, like, senior centers, Meals on Wheels, the other ones listed here, like North Idaho Crisis Center,
Yep.
Kootenai Recovery, I think U of I probably falls into that.
Yeah.
So we can offset quite a bit of this if we want to. We are in the process of setting up a bank account, and we have an executive sponsor. So it's just a matter of getting the application, the money would be transferred to us, and it would sit in an account. IAC made it very clear that we shouldn't rush into spending
Yes.
anything at this point, but if there are specific things in the budget that you would like to use the money for, we can allocate that, which would reduce the pressure on fund balance use on general fund use.
So let me ask you this, and we're going to deviate a little bit, but I'll try to make it brief. Who determines the use of that money? So let's say hypothetically, the committee, you guys come up, or we come up and we say, okay, we want to use $5 million for this particular application. Do we then go to Treasury and say, is this approved?
We would look at the Treasury guidelines, we would vet any requests, and then we would bring those to you and tell you what criteria we use based on our understanding and legal's understanding. So we'll be getting together and hammering out what we believe to be the current guidelines of what we'd be using, but Ide Bailey, JFOA, and then yesterday IAC said, don't be in a hurry to spend the money. We have a lot of time to spend it, and the rules are still being made, but there are some areas where Seth assured us there are some clear-cut areas where we can use the money. Community support is one of them. It's a perfect fit. There are some other areas too I won't mention right now, but we are looking at some larger projects. I would just say that the reporting requirements are fairly onerous, and
Quarterly, yeah.
yes, so
We're
Seth
responsible, not the
encouraged
state
us-
this time for
right.
anything.
So if something goes wrong, we're on the hook for it.
Yeah.
And there's a very real possibility that if we don't follow it to the letter of the law, we would owe it back with interest. So we want to be very careful, but there are some larger projects that we've identified, which Seth assured us that those are the projects that they don't think we would have any problem with, but we want to get more information and get that to you in a nice package and explain it to you in plain language, plain English, so that you can make an informed
So
decision.
some of these judgments or recommendations you're going to be making before we finalize the budget, right? Because it's
Yes.
going to have a budgetary.
It will have a
okay.
budgetary impact. We want to make sure that we have the funds available, so if there
Got
are
it.
things, and Seth encouraged us, if there are things in your budget right now, like Panhandle Health, that's a huge chunk, like some of these community support things, we can help take the pressure off the budget that way.
Got it.
So, that's great until the money runs out.
Exactly.
And then if our taxing has gone so low and the money has run out, then we just cancel all these services that the money paid for?
But you have other projects that are high priority, that's why you're over and above. So if you decide to take 8% or whatever that is, you can focus on these capital projects that don't qualify for ARPA while you're minding the store with ARPA money.
Right.
You're taking budget to pay for these other things. Then when the ARPA money runs out, then you're back to business as usual. These larger purchases have been taken care of. So it's a careful balance, and there's a lot of moving parts. But we're just starting, to brainstorm on how we do this and that we follow the letter of the law. We maximize the value for the county and the taxpayer.
Okay.
So for instance, like in fund balance, we have, for Fund 40, we have 2.9 million. That's going to eventually be drained with that obligation, that 846,000. That's going to offset maybe using those funds, 2 or 3 years.
That buys us some time, and Seth also said that county assistance, at this point in time, those statutes haven't gone away. So
Correct.
we don't know what's gonna happen. It could very well bounce back to being normal county assistance
Didn't he say
because,
that? I'm sorry, go ahead.
because they still haven't decided if they're gonna do Medicaid expansion in full. There's a push to get rid of Medicaid expansion. In the courts, so it could flip. There's a lot of unknowns, so we just wanna be very careful about making any sweeping decisions, but we learned a lot yesterday. It was a very good conference.
And I think the big question mark that we learned here is capital investments in public facilities to meet pandemic operation needs. So that anything capital related has to be obligated by 2024 and spent by completed project
By
by 2026. So there's going to be a question, which IAC is getting some guidance from my Bailey, and then we'll get some more guidance. What can
Right.
that be considered for capital projects?
One thing that they did spell out that Seth said was something that was very real possibility is we have shelved space in the jail that we could finish, and they specifically call out jails in the Treasury guidance. So that's something to consider because we're gonna get 2 tranches, approximately 16 million each. I mean, we could potentially finish the jail. That would solve a lot of the sheriff's problems, and it's a big capital project that we wouldn't have to worry about. And it directly relates to separating prisoners if there's an outbreak or medical care,
So
that kind of thing.
the other side of that is where are you gonna hire the people to work in the expanded portion? I'm not saying it's not a good idea to finish it out, but you're not gonna have bodies to fill those positions. So that's the ongoing cost that this money will not cover. So that's the thing those are the kinds of things that free money obligates taxpayers to. I just want everybody to be aware of that we're considering that part of it.
So,
If the sheriff says, if our jail is overflowing and we're gonna start breaking jail rules, like he said in his budget meeting, that's why I bring it up. It's like,
I don't think he's anywhere near that. I keep hearing this. When I asked the question the other day, they had 40 to 50 bodies that were destined for state.
Yeah, the census goes up and down, but it is generally trending up and will do so. And it's a good idea to finish that space out now. Had we finished it out before, I think it would have been about $3.4 million is what the estimate I heard. And today it's going to be double that.
well, yeah, building costs are up. So lots of things to consider. Again, I'm not advocating for anything. I'm just saying that there are needs that the county has where we could very well use this once-in-a-generation amount of money given to us and use it to, create a more sustainable future for the county.
Yes.
and to me, the biggest question, I'm going to bring it up, and it's not maybe a possibility, but the capital investment for public facilities to meet pandemic operation needs. We know in district court, they still need to be social distancing. We interview for those, the jury panels, and right now, we know everyone's on top of everyone in district court. The big question is, could this money be used? We still don't know that answer.
Yeah, you're right, we don't. And it's interesting, the thought came up, and to give credit where credit's due, I think it was Marissa that came up with this, is to take the current building, new court building, and, for lack of a better, build around that. Because if we're gonna deal with social distancing and the ability to conduct juries in the event we run into another crisis and not have to resort to the use of the fairgrounds, can we make a case that if we build around that, that is to say, how do I put this? Don't build a standalone building as we're
It's an
currently.
expansion, that's the key.
And that's kind of what Seth said yesterday, and I don't, again, he said you would have a better opportunity for this to pass muster if you're expanding current facilities than not building a brand-new building you were planning on
Right.
building
And
anyway.
if you want an example, look at Kootenai Health. While they were adding on, they had an existing building, and they added on to it all over the place. Took me 45 minutes to get from one end to the other going up. But they've done that very successfully, and I'm sure very economically, rather than build a new structure.
So the key word is expansion.
Expansion.
Yeah, and the devil's in the details, but there are opportunities here, and there could be some immediate relief in the budget, so that's a positive thing. So we're on the case, and we have our team put together, and I'll be excited to
And
bring
the
forward
thing
more
is, there are
info.
many applications for the money, so even if theoretically we could use it for an expansion, and I'm just gonna throw a figure out, let's say the expansion is the 20 mil. Well, who says we have to use 20 of the 32? Maybe we use 15 and perhaps pursue some other funding source if that's possible. I don't know. Now maybe you've got some money left over for the jail, if we decide that, and perhaps what other things might qualify.
Keep in mind, you can't reserve any of this ARPA money, you have to spend it. So if you wanted to reserve something, you definitely want to be spending the
yeah,
ARPA
by-
money.
Obligated by 2024 and
24, okay,
and then
got it.
completed by 2026.
So we have
So
time.
we have time. but
And
yeah.
they encouraged us, although we're not required to, they did encourage us to have like some kind of a big plan of how we're gonna spend the money and what we're gonna spend it on, and that helps us from a reporting perspective, because there are going to be detailed reports quarterly that are required,
Fair enough.
so.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on. I think I misplaced my.
Nick, did you have anything else? Because you.
Yeah, you're still here.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
it's gonna be longer, so, okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay.
Oh, goodness gracious, I just have my,
I think we're ready for Ann?
I think we're ready for Ann, right? We did everybody. Okay, cool.
No, we are. There's nobody else in the room.
Nobody else. Ann, your show. This is our public defender, Ann Taylor. Good morning.
Would you guys like me to start?
Okay, I'm just getting yours right now. Okay, cool.
Well, I guess I could start, same thing, bonus pool, wage adjustments, those things I want to handle overall, not individual departments.
Yep.
Moving costs, we can get rid of that. And
We're leaving, I'm sorry, go ahead.
we can't discuss it here, but we can discuss it in an executive session, has to do with their potential move.
Yep.
And so I know that we can get rid of that 5,000, but we do need to increase the property lease. So 16,800 times 12. So it was high, then it was reduced, now it's back to $201,600. 201,600.
Okay, so what line
Should we
item?
choose? Well, I'm looking at a summary here.
Okay. So yeah, I'm looking at her budget summary. I'm looking at,
Oh, that summary there. Let me
would it be other services and expenses?
Operating property lease, right now, is it at 198 right now?
Yeah, it's
We
at
can make
one-
that adjustment.
yeah. Yeah, it was the 272.
Oh, that's
going
it.
to be
Okay, yeah, that's it. That's that line
reduced to
item.
201. Yeah, that'll
Okay,
be
s-
reduced.
It's
Well-
198 in the system, so we'll just change that to 201.
Yeah.
Okay,
So not a huge fluctuation of what's in the system right now.
okay. And going back up again, okay, so we're gonna set aside wage adjustments and bonus pool, yes?
That's what I would like to do,
Yeah.
so we can handle everybody
I'm fine.
holistically.
Bill? Okay.
But then that was the same thing. Did you want to do that for RMO as well?
Yeah, do it with, what we're gonna handle so far, Tom, Jody, and Ann are their departments.
Ann has kind of a group of changes that are spelled out, and we can provide that underlying information to you.
Okay,
Right.
so, keep going, guys. So where does that take us?
Those are the only two cost drivers, really.
So basically, we took out roughly 160,000 and added, I think, 3,000 for the lease. So we just dropped, if I'm not mistaken, about 157 from the budget, from the proposed increase. So fiscal '22 goes from 3.313 to whatever, 157,000. It's gonna,
I'm not sure where the reduction happened. Can you guys explain that?
okay, so if you look at, okay, I'm looking at your, okay, it takes us down to to
Oh, that's
3,156.
old. That's an
This
old
one's
one.
old?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the net change before is new personnel in here? It is. So what I'm seeing, and I have the rent as 198, and I still have the moving costs in there, so it's kind of a wash. The net change year over year is 392,000 as currently asked.
Okay, yeah, I'm showing 398, but okay, close enough. Okay, go ahead.
Yep. So basically driven by the lease and by the personnel asks, and we can provide the underlying data.
Okay.
But given that the board is still thinking about 2% COLA and a 2% increase, that kind of hits that 4%. So mainly, it sounds like, Ann, it's just the attorneys that are the big push.
You have movement? Or you have movement?
No, I'm trying to prevent having movement. What is in there is an ask for an increase. We did two scenarios, and one was before I heard there would be possibly a COLA and a rate across the board. That one would have tried to bring people closer to the 90% of market, and then some higher for years of service in their positions. The other alternative does take into consideration if the rest of the employees were to get the bump ups that have been talked about so far. But in addition to those bump ups, I need attorney salaries bumped up. Every year we end up with that place where the bottom wage comes up, I hire somebody new, and then I've got
Compression.
people that have put time in and they're unhappy. And so my attempt would be to ask for an amount of a raise for every attorney from where they are now, so that with the increases that come, there'd still be spacing, but it's also to make me competitive. I have, I think, 4 positions, attorney positions open. It's just hard to staff people. The cost of living here is terrible, and it's hard to attract anybody, let alone really quality people. And, you know, we have duty, a constitutional duty to the people we serve, and we need good representation. The flip side of it is if our caseloads are too high, if we can't keep people employed, we may be in a situation where we can't keep cases and they have to be conflicted out, and that's far more expensive, and it's not something I want to do. So the second personnel scenario, when you're considering it, I know you're not making a decision today, it's really important to bump up each attorney's salary. You know, we have public defense money and some positions are funded that way. We've asked for 4% across the board for every employee, plus $4,500 for each attorney funded by the 2 grant pots of money. And so that's what I'm asking for each attorney too. I know it's a chunk of money, but I really need to keep who I have and attract people to fill the other spots.
And when will we know about their decision?
I don't believe until the end of July. I mean, it's very, very difficult to try to do the budgeting. If the decision from this board comes in first, I'll let them know it needs to match. I need to have both attorneys paid the same, whether they're grant or county funded positions.
So if we go back to the summary, all right, so I think you pointed out that it's, Dena, that the net change is an increase of 392,000. But going back to what we said earlier, if we delete or remove the wage adjustment, because you're going to factor those in anyway, right?
Right.
And the bonus pool at 10 grand, we're going to take out about 159 from that 392.
I see.
Okay, so the whatever 392 minus 100, roughly 160 is takes us to about 230,000
Yeah,
net
it brings
increase
it back
thereabout.
down. Yeah.
Okay,
So, and we can update those numbers.
Right.
And I'll work with Ann to put together, you know, just the scenarios in a very simple format, so you can kind of see, based on those target areas, what the cost would be.
Can I comment on the request for a bonus pool as well? I heard what Commissioner Duncan said, but I want to explain why I think it's important to have it in there. I didn't have it before, and I wanted to bring forth some star performers in our office. And because I didn't have it in my budget, that wasn't something that the board would address. And I'd really like to have the ability to reward in some fashion, and if there's a better way to do it, I would be happy to hear it. I definitely have people that go above and beyond. I have people that are the first to volunteer for things. They'll ask to take on extra chores. They'll ask to help other people. And I have people who will work at home at night, and they really hold us together, the people that are the star performers. And I'd like to have some ability to recognize that. So if the bonus pool's not the way, I'd like a way to do it, but it's in there simply based on the experience I had last year.
and
when I
we're going to
requested
take that up
bonuses.
next week.
Okay.
Yep,
Fair enough.
absolutely.
So would you like me just to leave those in there for now?
Well, it has to be done holistically, so I can't approve bonuses for her and not for so-and-so, but
that-
so-and-so, you know, so to me, it'll be like a retention bonus pool would be something I would suggest.
So would you like us to pull out all the bonus pools at this point?
Either you pull them all out or you leave them all in. I would pull them out.
That's
Take the-
what I like to.
Yeah, take them all out because
If we are going to address it holistically, that makes more
exactly.
sense.
If we're going to
Okay.
address wages, let's address wages, right, in totality, because
If-
it's really
yeah.
part and parcel.
Do you have a number in mind? Just a general bonus pool?
I'll have one on Wednesday, but it's not going to be a merit bonus. It will be a retention bonus.
That's fine, that's a good way to put it. What's happened? Never mind. I'm thinking about Dalton Gardens. Are they shutting down?
Well, their
Potentially,
levy
they could.
just failed, right? Whatever they had on the ballot was,
That
oh,
was
that was
Hayden
Hayden
Lake,
Lake, not
yeah.
Dalton, okay.
Dalton Gardens, yeah, I mean, their city council is not working together well, and their professional staff has quit. So, they're
And
gonna
then
have a
a year or
meeting on
so-
Monday, and the mayor in the paper said potentially they could close the doors Wednesday night. It's scary.
It's widespread.
Well,
Okay, then.
We're not there yet, but that's certainly a warning sign in the community.
Absolutely. Okay. Are we okay then with Ann, at least insofar as her budget's concerned? And that wraps up the budget piece, right? Okay, so on our agenda is a request to go into executive session. Do we have a motion, please?
I move that we enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061B.
I second the motion.
Bill Brooks,
Aye.
Commissioner Duncan.
Aye.
Chairman Filios.
Aye, and the motion's carried.
Hi, is anybody on the line?